I saw a comment on Instagram that said, "Why is this movie so aggressively unfunny?" And I can't stop laughing. Yo, the internet is undefeated. Hey, welcome to the channel. My name's Tiffany and you are here for comedy and conversation. And today we're talking about a comedy movie, I think. Listen, I am gonna do my very best to discuss this film on its merit and quality and be as objective as possible because I like to provide nuanced analyses. What is the multiple of analysis? I was right, analyses. I like to provide reviews to movies and messaging that get to the root of media, or in this case, the root of the challenges that we face in movie making. So this is not a review just to roast the film, although there's heaps of opportunity. This is about the elements that I think are important to us as movie watchers, right? Like story, context, production value, and comedy. So we're gonna talk about those things overall. And this is my first movie review this year. So I broke my neck trying to watch this movie. And y'all, my neck is like, why did you do this? Hey neck, when did you start talking? 1994. You were 3 years old at the time and your head was huge, so it was a lot of weight to carry. That makes sense, I've been doing neck rolls since preschool. But I'm getting ahead of myself. And if it wasn't clear before now, this will include spoilers. I am going to spoil this movie for you, but also, am I really spoiling it? Like after you watch it, you decide. Okay, let's get into the review. So You People is a romantic comedy starring Jonah Hill as a lovesick and lonely 30-something named Ezra Cohen, who, after a rideshare mix-up in LA, he connects with Amira Muhammad, played by Lauren London. And they find themselves connecting over their shared love and interest of the culture. And as they fall in love, their relationship is tested by their respective families. Ezra's progressive and semi-woke Jewish parents, played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus and David Duchovny, and Amira's unyielding yet concerned Muslim parents, played by Eddie Murphy and Nia Long. And the central plot focuses on how the families inject themselves into Ezra and Amira's relationship amidst clashing culture and societal expectations. This movie was co-written by Jonah Hill and Kenya Barris of Blackish and Grownish fame, who makes his feature film directorial debut with this on Netflix. So let's start off with a little light film history because this film does stand on the shoulders of two other films. Guess Who, which came out in 2005, stars Bernie Mac and Ashton Kutcher, and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, starring the late Sidney Poitier and Katharine Hepburn. And if you've never seen either of those movies, highly recommend them. The 2005 film is so cute and just really delightful seeing the chemistry between the late Bernie Mac and Ashton Kutcher. It sprinkles in some of those cultural conversations, but it's very, very organic in the way that the movie brings them up. And as for the 1967 film, it's a bit more on the dramatic side with Hepburn and Poitier and the characters really subverting the expectations of the time. In the 1960s, the belief was that films with black leads would not encourage white moviegoers to watch, but Guess Who's Coming was a bona fide hit. It grossed over $56 million and it remains a classic for movie buffs as it gives a snapshot to a time when interracial relationships were still very much taboo. You People in 2023 makes for an interesting connection because this movie is combining not only multiracial issues, but interfaith relationships as well. And this really brings us to the first element that I think we should discuss. This movie had so much potential to be a new spin on an old story. Romantic comedies by way of Meet the Parents or Big Fat Greek Wedding, or even that one with Issa Rae that I don't remember the name right now. What was the name of it? What was the name? The Lovebirds. Yes, that one. These are movies that go with familiar tropes of someone looking for love and then finding it where they least expect it. So what I was interested in after seeing the trailer was how this would all go together in a cohesive narrative. And let's just pause for the cause to mark that that's gonna be the last time in this review that I say that phrase, cohesive narrative. Because the storytelling is so odd in this film. Where do I begin? Okay, the opening of the movie is in black, which I guess they were like thinking this was an artistic choice. We just hear the voices. And it's Jonah/Ezra and his roommate and podcast co-host, played by comedian Sam J, discussing the culture. And I was already annoyed about 30 seconds in because the words Barack Obama, gay stuff, cocaine, and Jesus were said in the same few breaths. And it just felt like super low hanging fruit, okay? And let me just pause. If you're new to the channel, you might not know me at all. I am an actor and a filmmaker. And I'm also a follower of Jesus. And if it's not your thing, you're totally welcome here. But it's my thing, and it's something that I take very, very seriously. And yet I don't get offended easily. Funny is subjective. So I'm not mad at those jokes. They just didn't land at all. Like, it seemed like they were trying so hard for shock value funny that it was just whack. Now back into the story. They start off with establishing Ezra as this socially awkward guy who just wants to find a woman who understands him, but the Jewish girls that he meets are just not doing it for him. So right off the bat, the story is very linear. It's very much in a straight line. Like, for example, he goes to temple on Yom Kippur with his family, and there are these terrible interactions about his love life and questions on why isn't he married and he should be dating, yada, yada. Rada. And it's really the first challenge of this piece for me because they spend like 3 to 4 scenes establishing Ezra's dynamic and his personality, and they really could have just done it in one scene. It just speaks to modern day filmmaking issues, which are, why are you spoon feeding me this story? Like, why is everything so basic and elementary? It seems like they didn't think we would catch on to Ezra's social anxiety or that he's feeling behind in life. And there's even a scene where he and his roommate go on and on about the Drake albums that represent the current stage he's at in his love life.
I don't think I've heard of a man ever who wanted to be in a relationship so badly besides Drake. I'm talking views Drake.
I feel like I'm alone on a building in Toronto, dangling my legs off, wondering what it's like to feel companionship.
You're not even giving me Take Your Drake. You're giving me Houston, Atlanta, Vegas Drake. I'm talking crying over strippers, no beard.
You're right. I need to be more CLB Drake.
The bit just goes on entirely too long, y'all. It's almost dating itself, having been in the works since 2020 to 2021, but it's clear they're trying so hard to be relevant and it just fell flat. And another example of this A plus B equals C storytelling is when Amira and her brother Omar are in a coffee shop. She reveals to him that she's going on a date with a white man, and then Eddie Murphy, as her father, makes his first appearance in the movie. Now, I have to say, as a comedic actor, I love Eddie Murphy. I think he's truly iconic. I have seen nearly every film he's ever been in, with my top favorite being Life. Life is such a good movie. Please thumbs up this video if you've seen Life or any other incredible Eddie Murphy movies. Make sure that you like this video. And if you haven't seen Life, let me know your favorite Eddie Murphy movie down in the comments below. There are so many reasons that I love comedy because of Eddie, and I will be giving that man his flowers as the powerhouse that he is. There would be no Shrek franchise if it wasn't for Eddie, period.
You know you are quite a decorator. It's amazing what you've done with such a modest budget. I like that boulder. That is a nice boulder.
Eddie/Akbar Muhammad, he arrives in the cafe with a black sweatshirt on that says Fred Hampton was murdered. And if you know history, it establishes this pro-black dynamic that's about to take place. This is my first kind of biased point of view and not really objective at all. They wasted Eddie Murphy in this movie. They wasted him. They wasted the comedians in this movie because the conversation in the coffee shop is so unnatural and the pacing just seems off. It's like they forced it in. And it's because they gave 3 to 4 scenes to Ezra, and then Akbar's arc, why did I write it like this? Akbar's needed to be established in one scene, and it wasn't enough. And it's like they were depending on his sweatshirt to give the context of lines, which I wouldn't be mad at if they didn't make the character seem so one-dimensional. But this is the problem that I see throughout this movie, where the only character that seems to get this full exploration is Ezra. The other leads are kind of left these gimmicky scenes at best, and we just get a touch of what they're experiencing with minimal lines and very little screen time. It's like they didn't even spend enough time developing those characters as a whole because they were relying on the casting of all these A-listers to carry underdeveloped writing. And I want to move on to the comedy, but let's talk about another C first. The thing about comedy, especially improv, is when you see how effortlessly people seem to get on. It's kind of like seeing Key and Peele sketches, or the Wayans brothers, or even Amy Poehler and Tina Fey. There's something so electric when two people are so comfortable riffing off one another, and it's really easy for the audience to take it in. But it's also something that you really can't force. It's kind of like catching lightning in a bottle. And even if you have one very charismatic person, they can steal scenes without even meaning to because they're so easy to watch in comparison to everybody else. So overall in this movie, chemistry is severely lacking. It's just like, I can't tell if it was me and my personal preference or if it was a casting problem, but there's multiple things that can be true, right? Jonah Hill can be a funny actor and not be funny alongside Eddie Murphy and Lauren London and Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And Jonah and Lauren London's on-screen romance, it was just very strange to me. Like, I'm grateful to see Lauren out and acting again because I know the last few years have been so tough for her personally. And the untimely passing of her longtime partner and baby's father, rapper and philanthropist Nipsey Hussle, is really heartbreaking. So this isn't really to come so much for the acting side of things, but as far as the cast goes, they just seemed very ill-matched. Like I saw a lot of comments online that were wondering why Jonah Hill played the lead role since he seemed to lack that traditional leading man quality and look that we've become accustomed to. And for me, I don't care about looks. Like, I don't need a 6'3", tall, dark, and handsome leading man. I really feel that people need to expand their perspective of beauty and attractiveness based on a person's character and how they carry themselves. However, I do agree that there seemed to be a lack of charisma or even just feel-good energy from the love between Ezra and Amira. And I didn't get it. Like, I didn't get why they liked each other. I didn't really believe their love story. It was all just very forced in and unsettling in my spirit. I think I wanted them to be cute, but I realized very quickly that I was being manipulated by the soundtrack, the song Stay High by Donald Glover, that was trying to persuade me to feel romance when there really wasn't any. 26 minutes and 59 seconds in. That's how long it took me to let out an audible laugh in this film. And that's 24 minutes longer than what I would expect for a movie that says it's a comedy. So let me just say again that funny is subjective. If you're watching this and you're going, I watched the movie and I laughed so many times, I'm really happy for you. And I mean that in all sincerity. I guess I would just challenge you, like, tell me why you were laughing. And I know that feels kind of like a technical exercise because it is, but let's investigate the funny. I usually laugh pretty easily and I find a lot of things funny, but cringe humor is a very specific type of funny. It's very modern, where secondhand embarrassment, if you think about how self-aware that we've gotten in our culture due to smartphones and TikTok and social media, there's something voyeuristic about laughing at things that are not happening to us. It's not full-on empathy or sympathy. It's kind of this mutation. We can be removed from the interaction in a safe way and still be close enough to peer into what's awful about a situation. Larry David is famous for this style of comedy, and his show Curb Your Enthusiasm, which my husband and I are currently watching from the beginning and dissecting, is a very uncomfortable watch. But that's kind of the point. His characters get themselves into all kinds of crazy situations that anyone would just want to disappear from. But you people seems to misunderstand that cringe comedy is firmly rooted in realism, not absurdity. When you find people who open mouth and insert foot again and again, it's like a verbal disease. They can't stop digging that hole deeper because they truly have the best intentions, and yet they're missing the mark at every chance. Take the scene where Ezra's family is meeting Amira for the first time. Julia Louis-Dreyfus playing his mother Shelley and David Duchovny playing as his father Arnold are truly hilarious. I laughed because the moment that Amira sits down, Arnold kind of thumbs up at Ezra to approve of his choice, and Ezra just is like, please stop. And it's so accurate to what I've even experienced meeting well-intentioned family and friends who don't know when to quit. The comedy in this scene feels like it slowly builds with each joke topping the next. And again, I don't want to oversell it. It's not like comedy gold or anything, but it really starts to show the chops of the veteran actors who get a moment to shine. Shelley is a both progressive, overbearing, tone deaf, all at the same time, and she seems to be completely unaware of how far she goes off the tracks. Amira mentions that she's from Baldwin Hills via Inglewood, and with raised eyebrows, Shelley says, "Oh, that's something." And then she says, "I heard that Magic Johnson has done a lot of wonderful things." And I almost lost it because it's clear that she's about to expose her limited understanding of LA in this very conversation, and we all just are waiting to see where it goes. On the flip side, something that's really overused as a comedy device in this movie was Ezra's uncomfortability with everything. His character is written throughout this scene, as well as the next scene where he invites Amira's parents to Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles like this. And y'all, he invited the parents to the woman that he wants to propose to Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles. That's a real place in LA if you've never been. And it would be funnier if the writing didn't spend so much time earlier on establishing that Ezra has a podcast for the culture. And I know I keep saying for the culture, but if you don't know what that is and why I'm saying it, it's because I'm not referring to our culture in present day, but the culture, meaning Black people's contributions to trends and music and style and influences overall on pop culture. The fact that they have built this character up as being somewhat versed in Black issues and culture and social justice, it just doesn't make sense that he would think this was an appropriate thing to do. Ezra is not funny in his awkwardness. He's more just uncultured at best. All of his lines feel kind of like a fever dream. And there's one point where he goes on a tangent and says that Jesus Christ technically had mixed race children, which he thinks is great because mixed race people are really awesome. He goes on to make a comment about how Amira is not pregnant because they don't do that much stuff. And then he says, she knows her way around it. To her parents, her Black Muslim parents. And I just don't buy that it's funny. It doesn't ring true at all. It's not funny because it's not true. Whew, I want out of this movie at this point, but we're gonna just persist. Earlier, I mentioned that Kenya Barris wrote Blackish, and this movie feels very much like an extension of that. So if you're into that, if you're familiar with that work, you might recognize similar lighting techniques and colors, the blues, the yellows and greens and reds. It's very vibrant. I love the way that everything looks, and the DP did his thing on this. Shout out to the cinematographer, Mark Doring-Powell, who also has done episodes of Grownish. And it's very nice how they balance the practical lighting in scenes with the studio lighting on the faces of each actor. I really love the richness of the color schemes. The colors and patterns and clothing is beautiful and it's bright, and the wardrobe is fabulous. Plus the movement of the camera is very fluid and smooth. And the locations are dope. I don't know who picked the locations, maybe the production designer, her name's Maxine Shepard. She may have picked them, I'm not quite sure who did that, but they had there was one scene where there was a rehearsal dinner and there was waterfalls falling outside of the set. It was just beautiful. But my least favorite editing was the slideshow shots of LA to transition between scenes. And they did it for every scene. They would blast music. And don't get me wrong, the soundtrack is fire. Every song placement was a banger. Everyone was great hip hop, but it just felt like overkill with the slideshow thing. It was kind of like they were trying to do a love letter to LA, and it fell into iMovie, and I was like, please stop it. I also hate when movies make something somebody great at something and it's fake. They had Ezra playing basketball, and it's like he was getting into a game of street ball, and his future father-in-law Akbar is kind of there, and there's this scene where he's gonna get into the game and show his skills, and they kept cutting away with editing magic to try to make it seem like this character could just ball for no reason. And I couldn't deal, because it was clear that Jonah Hill didn't have any legit basketball ability, and that's no shade to him. Okay, fine, it's a movie, but you could have made him great at some other stereotype with Black people, just not basketball, because we can tell. The biggest challenge of this movie is not that it spoon feeds a story, or that it fakes basketball games, or that it talks down to the audience. And it's also not that there's 12 or so comedians in this film with very little funny. The amount of rated R foolishness that was completely unnecessary and not PG enough for me to talk about in this video, that's also not even the problem. The biggest challenge in this movie is that it attempts to fuse conversations about race and religion with romance and comedy, and it doesn't fully develop any of the ideas. And what results is scenes that we're supposed to feel something in, but we don't. You really have to earn the audience's attention and connection as a movie, and when you fail to do that, you have these puffed up moments with very little payoff. I struggled to feel anything towards these characters. I didn't care if their families got on okay or if they drove the couple apart. I didn't care because the writing and the story wasn't grounding itself in any real challenges that face interracial or interfaith relationships. It just kind of made caricatures of every person. And so there were no moments that really felt genuine to these experiences. The religious perspective is nearly completely lost. And I'm not Jewish or Muslim, and yet I imagine if this was the representation I had for my relationship with Jesus, I'd be very disappointed by how little concern the production team seemed to have for the accuracy of that. For the racism conversation, the many questions that are asked are never answered. The movie kind of dates itself with how it talks about police brutality, where it offers this really obvious refrain. police brutality against Black people is wrong. The conversation of whether playing trauma Olympics between Black and Jewish people between slavery and the Holocaust, now that conversation is something that could have been fleshed out. But the script relied on tropes of progressive white people missing the mark and militant Black people distrusting anyone white. I know that's an overgeneralization, but that's all that this script gives us, just generalities. Nothing is specific. And this is where I get really frustrated with this work, because instead of opening a topic to be further explored or inviting the audience to do some heart checks while they watch, we're just tossing dead seeds on shallow soil. This movie could have been a catalyst to really shift someone's perspective about interracial dating, or even open someone else up to think deeply about romantic choices, but instead it falls so flat because it's awkwardly inserting lectures on being too woke for your own good or too closed off that it's aggressive. There's no nuance in the conversation at all. And that makes it seem like if we who are watching aren't over the top racist or over the top conscious, then we don't have anything to work on. But that's not true, right? Like, we could all use small shifts in our thinking when it comes to our fellow human being. We could all learn to see people for who they are rather than their color or their religion, and treat them as individual, not as a toy, as Amir says in the film. And frankly, and I've already stepped outside of my objective box, but I gotta keep going. We have got to stop consuming this stuff casually. By watching these movies and voicing our approval for them online, we're encouraging these production companies and these studios and writers to refuse to write human beings as dynamic and multi-layered. And if we continue watching movies and TV shows like this and paying these streaming services exorbitant fees, we gotta start demanding better. We have to ask for work that truly represents us. Representation matters, but only if it's quality. And my loyal subscribers know that I'm on a mission to share redemption in media. And although this particular piece was not as transformative as I would have hoped, I'm gonna continue doing analyses like this to really encourage all of us to be more aware of what we're taking in, what we're consuming, and be accountable to how it feeds us. So in that accountability, I would say that you people is not my thing, but I am grateful that art is accessible so that we can respectfully discuss and assess what could have been done to make it better. But since you made it all the way to the end, you are a real one. Make sure that you like this video, make sure you subscribe for future videos, and drop a hashtag for the culture in the comments below so that I know that you made it to the end. And let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you saw it, what did you think? Do you have a completely different perspective from me? Did you agree or disagree? I want to hear it all. And also tell me about other movies that you want me to do a deep dive on. It would really help me plan out content for you guys if I can get some things on the list that you're really interested in. So I will see you guys in the next one. Bye now.